Hello, my name's Carmen, and you're listening to the CalmnConnected podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Ruby. I met Ruby volunteering at a hostel in Prague and quickly learned she is my personal go to for dreamy travel romance. What I love about Ruby is that she's never shy to opening up about the realities of her experiences, because as we all know, romance isn't always dreamy. Today we discuss our own experiences when navigating situationships abroad, including how to protect your heart and mind in challenging situations, setting boundaries that align with who you are, and embracing the beauty of meeting new people no matter the outcome. Two short disclaimers. Firstly, to apologise for the audio quality. I like to call it teething problems, but I promise to have this all figured out soon, but I appreciate your patience whilst I'm just starting out. And secondly, to mention that this podcast is not intended to replace professional advice. We are just two girls in our 20s figuring out the world just as much as you are. But other than that, I hope you enjoy this episode. So, Ruby, did we meet I think we met in December, end of December.
Yeah.
And we worked in a hostel together in Prague, and there was some strange moments while we were there together, but good moments too. So yeah, Ruby, do you want to give us a rundown, life with you, what's been happening? Yeah.
Yeah. So we worked at the same hostel in Prague in December, and then I went back to school for another semester, graduated, and then once I graduated, I spent the whole summer in Europe again, solo traveling, doing the same kind of thing that I had done in the winter. So working at different hostels and stuff. And then I just basically spent June, July, and August all over Europe. Um, volunteering and stuff.
Did you do like some in hostels, some not? I think I remember you saying.
Um, yeah, so the first month I was working at a hostel in France, and then I did 2 weeks of just staying in hostels as like a guest in Croatia and Montenegro. And then I went to Paris for my birthday because my birthday is Bastille Day. I wanted to celebrate my birthday in Paris. And then I spent the last 2 weeks of July doing another workaway in the Czech Republic, but it was like in the countryside of the Czech Republic. And then I did 2 weeks in Switzerland doing a workaway, but that one wasn't at a hostel. It was like in this old couple's home, basically just helping out in their garden and stuff. And I did that one with a friend from home, so it was really cool. And then the last 2 weeks, I was just traveling with friends that I had met and also friends.
What do you think got you into doing it by yourself? Because obviously it's a huge jump for you going from America to Europe. It's different from what I did. What do you think it
Yeah,
was?
I mean, so it kind of started with the idea of going to Prague because initially I was supposed to study abroad there, and then COVID canceled that.
Mm.
So I kind of had it in my head like before I ever thought about solo traveling, I was like, I want to study abroad in Prague. And then when I wasn't able to study abroad there anymore, I started looking into other ways to be there without having to pay $1 million.
Mhm.
And I don't remember who it was, but someone told me about Workaway, and they were like, you can basically stay places for free in exchange for work. And I was like, I had never heard of anything like that before. I think once I did the first one in Prague and I started meeting all these people who were solo traveling, that's when I was like, oh my God, like I can actually, this is feasible. Like I don't need thousands and thousands of dollars. And I also don't need, it was just inspiring to see like girls around my age doing it by themselves or with friends or whatever. But like, it just showed me that it was possible. And I didn't know about Hostel World. I didn't know about like Skyscanner. I didn't know about any of these things that were like super useful.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think once I had that first experience for the month in Prague, I was like, oh, I'm definitely gonna come back and like fully experience like what all these people around me are experiencing right now. I was jealous. I was like, you guys get to go like every few days to a different place, and I'm just like here for a whole month. Like, I mean,
Mm.
it was great, and I was grateful to be there, but like, yeah, I just was like, I want to do that too.
Mhm. So Prague was your first one?
Yeah, yeah. I was like,
Wow.
wait, but yeah.
You were so confident for that to be your first one, I didn't even realise, like, that was yeah.
I think I just like I don't know. I don't I was definitely like scared. And my first night I was kind of miserable. Like I didn't really I don't know how much I talked to you about that, but I fully was like crying the first night because it a lot of things weren't what I was expecting.
Mhm.
And I think that and I
Yeah.
think I I hadn't yet been in the mindset of like I got used to expecting the unexpected once I
Mhm.
started fully traveling by myself like over the summer. But
Mm.
that first experience I was like, like this is not what I signed up for.
Mhm. I remember that too.
You were the
Eh,
first friendly face and you made me feel like everything was going to be okay because literally this is how we actually met for
mm,
context because I was like pulling my huge I had two fucking giant suitcases, which is so funny because I literally brought a a check bag and a carry-on just for 1 month, and then for my 3 months, I literally only brought a carry-on, so but when I first met Carmen, I was lugging my big ass suitcases up the stairs, and she was like, "Oh, do you need help?" Like, and she was like so
I don't even
sweet.
remember that.
You
I
were just
remember,
so
like, talking to you on the bunk beds, like, I remember because I was underneath you, I remember, like, that first conversation, I remember just looking at your tattoos being like, "Yes, she's cool, I
aw.
like her."
I
But
was
yeah.
just so relieved that I was like, "Okay, even if, like, we don't become besties or, like, even if there's no one else here that I get along with, like, I know that there's, like, a nice person that will, like, help me if I need help." So,
Yeah.
yeah, very reassuring.
God. Okay, so for every chat, like, I had, like, a focus in mind, and it felt just right to do it with you, like, I've been watching the stories the whole summer and, like, seeing how open you are about just, like, that awkward topic of, like, travel romance, but not, like, the dreamy like, all positive, like, I feel like you were very open on your story about, like, the highs and lows and all the factors that come into, like, meeting people when you're traveling. So I felt like,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely wanted to ask you about that. And my first question would be, do you think you have any tips for someone getting into like their first situationship when they're traveling? Because it's never a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think you have to be equally realistic with yourself and equally, like, romantic like,
Mm,
the nature of a situationship of when you're traveling is that it's this, like, intense romantic thing that can't really exist in reality, at least not in the same way that a situation at home could.
mhm,
Potentially. There's, like, everything's specific to a given situation, but, like, I'm just I'm very motivated by romance. Like, I love romance, and um, a as much as I'm realistic in my head about the way things will go, I very much follow my heart first, and I
mhm,
think like, so I wouldn't advise someone to just completely, like, outlaw the romanticism of it, you know what I
mm,
mean? Like, I think you can be realistic and at the same time, like, let yourself enjoy the romance of it because it's so like meeting someone when you're in a new place and neither of you are from there potentially or like I don't know, it's very exciting. It's like a very
mhm,
unique experience and I think you should let yourself enjoy it and also know that like it is just that. Like it is a magical like one of a kind experience that will probably end, you know?
it hurts. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've not found that balance yet, but yeah.
I think maybe this is what I'll say. I think you have to know yourself well enough to know if you can handle that ending. Like
Mm,
if you can fully like enjoy it and let yourself experience it and be okay with it not really existing in reality when you go home, like, then go for it, but if you don't think that like, if that'll break you, like, really break you, then you can't you have to know your limits.
Mm.
And it's not to say that, like, it'll always end, like, people do long distance relationships and, like, there's but in my experience, like, it's well, I don't wanna get into my experience too much, but yeah.
I hear you. Yeah. It's hard because you've got to keep it broad, but do you have any like highlight best and worst experiences and like how the two compared?
I will say that I honestly haven't had like, all in all, at the end of the day, the men in Europe have treated me way better than men in America. So, like, I will say that, like, when I'm considering, like, my travel romances, whatever, like,
Mhm.
it's generally positive, like, I'm not on bad terms with anyone. Um, but that being said, I don't know, I don't know that I've had, like, a specifically negative experience. I think
Yeah, like a standout.
yeah, like, there's been, like, things that have hurt me and things that have been, like, upsetting or hard to hear, like, I think the first kind of travel romance that I had, um, there was some disappointment involved because there was, like, other people involved that I wasn't aware of, and even though it wasn't an exclusive situation, it was just kind of like I felt like I had been deceived in some ways. Um, so it was, there's been like some hurt feelings like that, but always expressed with like the best of intentions and like I yeah, the best experiences like I don't know, I've had some really nice really good times.
Beautiful experiences.
Yeah, like I can't really pick a favorite. Like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I
I feel like same with me. I feel like the worst has been when it makes you feel like so naive and then like it's constantly like a reflection of like, oh shit, I didn't have it all figured out like when I was going into it. And yeah,
yeah,
like the best ones have been when you like feel like so you can be vulnerable and connected with that person and it feels safe. So
yeah.
yeah, I feel like I really
Or I think like you were saying with like you feel naive. I think
hmm
for me what it feels like is like I'm like mad at myself because I knew that this would happen, but I did it
hmm
anyway. And
you
I'm
didn't
like,
trust
oh,
your gut.
yeah, it's like here I am again in this same situation that I've put myself in countless times and like why do I always do this to myself?
Exactly, exactly. Oh, so when we were in Prague, like I just remember it so clearly. So there'd be like moments when it'd be me and you working, or like one person working, one person didn't. And like part of our job role was to host pub nights, pub crawls, or like parties, drinking games. And there was one night in particular where like the hostel was full of men. We were like the only women, and we took
That
them
was
out.
most of the nights, let me say. I feel like most of the nights it was all men, but
Yeah, bit grim, but I think it was your night, and I came with you, wasn't it? And we had to
yeah.
take them on a pub crawl, and I just remember being, like, in awe of you because I didn't realize how much, like, I just people please around men. I was getting into boring conversations I didn't wanna be in, taking beers off people I didn't wanna take beers off, whereas, like, there was a point in the night where you just, like, clocked out. You were, like I think you went outside and, like, waited outside for a bit, but I think just watching that and the difference to how I was acting with these men I didn't wanna be in conversations with, I was just like, "Hmm, like, how do you do that?" And I feel like it's so important, especially when you're working abroad, to, like, have those boundaries within yourself to know what you do and don't wanna do. And I was wondering, do you think I feel like for you, it's not something that's come with travel, but do you think it's something you've gained over time, or do you think you've always had it? Because I was like, that is so important when you're traveling.
I honestly don't know where that comes from, but I know that it hasn't always been that way. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, I was in therapy for a very long time as a kid, and I think my therapist really ingrained in me, like, the quality of, like, self-assuredness and, like, advocating for yourself. She just made me feel like I could never I should never allow myself or force myself to be in a position that I don't wanna be in, and,
Mhm,
like, when that's, like, really ingrained in you so young, and you don't have as much guilt about it, like, I still do,
mhm,
but I put myself first in those situations
mhm,
because I've been, I think, in I've been forced in a lot of situations where, like, I was made to be uncomfortable. I think as, like, a counter to that, I'm, like, so protective of, like, my peace, like, not to be corny, but, like, I really
mhm.
like, I will not be in a conversation for a second longer than I wanna be. I mean, with some exceptions, like, with a girly, like, I'm it's I'm nice, like, I'm not a mean person. Like, if it's, like, some man that's, like, really just, like, being annoying, like, I don't have I have some sympathy for that, but, like, I'm not gonna it's especially if they're, like, being flirty or, like, actually making me uncomfortable, where it's, like,
Mm,
I don't have I don't feel bad for you anymore, like, I'm removing myself because why would I let my like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
it's so good. Yeah, but I just remember, like, how do you do that? I was like, how does she, like, just set that
Because
note?
not as nice as you.
But I don't even think that was me being nice. I think that was just like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." You know what I
No, but
mean?
it's not I mean, I think that you have a lot of empathy for everyone, and that's a great thing, you know? Like, I think I have a good amount of empathy for everyone, but when it comes to my discomfort I mean, and maybe it could also be true that, like well, I don't know. I guess you probably are equally as uncomfortable as me in this situation.
Potentially. Yeah, I think I just have a good way of, like, blocking it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So,
don't
yeah,
know
you think, like, built it up over time. It wasn't like a event that you can remember, you know?
yeah, and I think it's probably likely that I witnessed other girls being like that and
Mm,
thought like, "Oh, okay, like I can do that too."
mm,
But I can't think of any specific person or time.
mhm.
I don't know what it is.
I guess,
Like,
yeah, it's like making that choice and just being like, "This is who I am, deal with it."
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
almost like an act, but it's not an act.
and
'Cause
I
I think
think you can do that in a compassionate way, or at least not in like a bitchy way. Like
mhm,
I would never be like, go like leave. I don't want to talk to you. But if you're saying something like that's not interesting, or I'm bored, or I just don't like what you're saying, then I might just be like, yeah, and then not continue the conversation. I don't know where that comes from, or how to bring that out of other people, or if it even
mhm,
should be brought up to other people, because I don't want to
mhm.
make people feel bad either.
Yeah, it's true to who you are as well, I guess, like, you don't wanna like, me and my friend were talking about it the other day, and it's like it's very easy to be manipulated or, like, vulnerable to situations, but if you put on this, like, front, like, "I've got it all together," sometimes that's, like, not acting, like, honest and, like, how you would usually like, we act from a very, like, vulnerable, loving, which is a lot of the time taken advantage of, but, like, to not act like that would then, I don't know, take away the chance of, like, a vulnerable connection coming back in. But, yeah, I think it's an interesting one I've not figured out yet, but it was very good to watch you do that because I didn't even think it was possible, like, I don't think I'd ever seen anyone do that before you. Just, like,
So
not give a fuck.
funny. In those moments, I don't even think I realize that I'm doing that. Like I'm
Yeah.
just kind of yeah. But but it's making me feel like I'm a bad person.
No, not at
Making me
all,
feel
like,
like I shouldn't do that.
I
But
guess it's just built into women, isn't it? Like, and other people, but built in that you've just gotta please them before even thinking about how you feel in the situation, which is just why I was like, when I saw it. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I really think my therapist is the reason. She's great.
God, just like praise. Yeah, did you have any ways to like getting to know all these new people at once? And especially like in a romantic sense, while still getting to know who you are, can be like quite a lot all at once. So like, is there any ways that you'd remain grounded or like true to yourself, not just like travel you, but like true to who you are when you're getting into these new relationships, platonic or romantic?
Hmm. Well, I journal a lot, and I think that that has been the most grounding thing, especially this past summer. Because admittedly, I didn't really like. I've always kind of journaled a little bit in my just in my phone,
Mhm,
but when I went to Prague, that was the first time where I actually kept a journal. Like not every day, but every few days I would write in it.
mhm,
And the same over the summer, I had that was right next to me. I had a journal that I wrote in all the time, especially whenever I was like experiencing any kind of strong emotion relating to meeting new people or not.
mhm,
And that I find really grounding because it allows you to like kind of psychoanalyze what's going on and like
mm,
analyze your own thoughts and all your fears and the perceptions going on or your perceived perceptions that are going on and like yeah. And then also, talking to your friends from home, talking to family, like
mhm,
FaceTime, all of that is like super, super important because there was a lot of time that I felt lonely, like both times, like in Prague the first time and then over the summer, like I felt lonely probably a good like 30% of the time, I would say, which is not
yeah,
nothing,
mhm,
So yeah, I think it's really important to have something that like connects you to yourself like that. Like for me,
mhm,
writing is like the way to access it's like you're having a conversation with yourself. It's like
mhm,
that is the number one thing to do if you're lonely because it's like,
yeah,
"Hi, I'm right here." Like, just talk to me.
mhm. And I think it's like you're unconscious as well, isn't it? Like it just comes out when you're writing it down.
Yeah,
And like,
exactly, and you always feel better. Like,
yeah.
you realize especially if there's things that you wanna say to someone, but you don't feel like you can, and you
Mhm.
just put them in a journal, it's like, it is totally a release, and like, you feel so much better.
Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, I feel
Do
like you
you
always forget actually when you go in that like fast pace. Sometimes I forget to like pull out the journal, but then it's like as soon as you sit back down and do it, you're like, "Oh."
Yeah. Do you have any other, like, method or ways that you would suggest?
I think for me, like when I was like going through it, especially like in an intense like environment, it would always be like taking myself out, whether that's like for a walk or a run, just like realizing that I am my own person away from the environment.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, bringing family back home. Yeah, I definitely didn't do enough journaling. Like hearing you say that, I was like, yeah, I think I should have done that more.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I definitely also like, in my ideal world, I keep a journal every single day, but I
mm,
don't do that, so I mean, yeah, I think we can't make ourselves feel there's enough to make yourself feel guilty about, and making yourself feel guilty about not doing a thing that's good for you is, do it when you can, and, like
yeah, no, I like that. Ah, so because I remember thinking about this about you, to be fair, but there's like so many connotations when it's to do with like a romantic sense when you're traveling. There's connotations with solo female travel that it's like so unsafe and like be careful. So like when you're going out and meeting these people, whether it's like you're going on a date with this guy that you've never met before, do you think there was any times for you personally where you did feel like unsafe or you were like, I should send my friends my live location right now? I remember you did the thing on your story where you were like, I'm gonna keep you updated, which I loved. But yeah.
there was one time where I was in Croatia and I was walking back to the hostel, and it was like a 40-minute walk because I couldn't figure out the buses, and I was like, "Whatever, I'll just walk. It's like beautiful here anyway." And um, And there was this guy that, like, walked past me. He, like, walked past me, and I saw that he was, like, looking at me, and then he turned around and, like, started walking with me,
Mhm.
and I don't remember what he said, but that was the only time where I got kind of scared because there was, like, no one else on the street, and it was dark, it
Mm.
was late. Um, but I think I just said, like, "I'm not, like, interested," or whatever, and then he left. Um, but in terms of, like, the actual, like, romantic stuff, like, I never used Tinder or anything, like, I never met up with someone that I, like, actually hadn't met. I'd always met people in group settings or
Mm.
when there were other people around.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if I would advise against using, like, dating apps. I'm someone that's, like, kind of cautious to meet someone for the first time off of a dating app in general
Mm.
because I'm such a, like, vibes person, and if I've just the only times that I've done that have worked out so terribly for me.
Mhm.
Like, I've only ever used dating apps to, like, confirm that I'm interested in someone that I've
Yeah.
already met? So,
Yeah.
and it can be hard, like, it can definitely be hard, and I had friends that were, like, worried about me in the first situation, because I did fly to I did fly to France for someone that I met once,
Yeah.
um, but, it was fine. He didn't kill me, so
Love. I feel like, yeah, it's like a trusty gut, isn't it? You get that gut feeling, but then it's also really hard to like almost put that wall back up. I remember the first solo trip I did, I'd met like a group of guys, and like my trust went down that much. Like, trying to think how to explain it. It's like when you first meet them, you're like, yeah, I need to figure out whether I can trust you. But then you spend like 2 days with them and you're like, oh my God, she's my best friends. So
yeah,
it's like hard to find that balance between like, yeah, you don't really know these people, but they seem nice. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, and I think my, bad habit is, like, I tend to at least feel like I get close to people really quickly, and so then I feel really comfortable around them, and I feel like I can trust them because I've been already so vulnerable from the beginning, and it, like,
Mhm.
allows them to be vulnerable with me from the beginning, but then that can be misleading, I think, because then, like, in my head, my intuition is like, "Yeah, this is someone that, like, you can trust because there's already so much vulnerability there," but, like, I guess it's never worked out terribly for me. Like, I've never been in an unsafe situation with someone like that,
Mhm.
but I think it's still something to be a little wary of. Like, just because you have, like, long, deep, serious conversations the first night you meet doesn't mean that they're not gonna, like, kill you. I don't know, I
For sure.
guess.
Sure. It's so hard though, isn't it, to find the balance? It's like, where do you draw the line? Because you're not gonna be traveling for that long. It's like, I remember my friends being like, "Oh my gosh, Colin, you've only known him for like 3 weeks or whatever." But then it's like, well, how long do you leave it? You know what I mean?
3 weeks is a long time, sorry. That's a long time.
Yeah. And I think like it just moves so, but then it is difficult. Like, it could still be a killer.
Yeah.
But yeah, leading on from that, do you think there's any times, I know you said you've not had like many like standout bad points with people, but were there any times where you felt a bit like, oh, this could be like a bit emotionally unsafe right now? Like I could be getting manipulated here, or like, yeah.
Not, like, manipulated,
Mhm.
but I have felt like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my feelings hurt by the end of this," like,
Yeah.
or I'm not as or you're not invested as I am, or that sort of thing, or, I tend to, like, have those assumptions in the first place just because of past experiences that I've had. So, it's hard to know when you're, like, projecting that and when it's, like, you're
Mhm.
actually reading signs that, that they don't want something as serious or whatever. Not even that they don't want something as serious, but because again, this is all in the context of travel, so it's by
Mhm.
definition, like, has a lifespan and, like, will end. But, I'm a little delulu. Like, I
Aren't
just
we
like
all?
I
Yeah.
just like love. I'm a lover. As I had a conversation with my friend Sophie last night, and I loved her use of this word because she was saying like, I'm just a lover. Like that's what I am. And it's like I think that's such a better way to claim, like, rather than speaking negatively about yourself and saying like, "Oh, I get attached too quickly," or blah blah blah, like I'm just so like needy or whatever. Just saying like I'm a lover. Like when I am in that situation where like I'm giving and receiving affection like that, I really like go fully into it. And I think that there's like pride in that. And also like, yeah, I think it's a beautiful, empowering thing to be like, I love people a lot and quickly and
Mhm.
easily and very hard and it's real. Like so yeah, anyway, that's just a
No,
part of it. But
exactly. It's like that will then like open up the other person to be able to feel like vulnerable and to
yeah,
you now. If there's that
yeah,
wall up, it's not gonna happen. But I guess yeah, it's like trusting the gut, isn't it? I feel like even if they've not done anything to cause that, I feel like there's still a feeling in your body and there's a reason for that, isn't there? You know, as much as you could be like delusional with that as well, or you projecting your past experiences onto them. I think there's still like trust the feeling in your belly, like if you get it. But yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I think that's the thing I struggle with the most is like because sometimes it's intuition, and sometimes it's just like sheer anxiety, and it's hard to know when it's real. Because it's one thing to know that a situation is like not sustainable and is eventually going to end, and it's another reason, or it's another thing to think like, oh, they don't even want to be here with me right now, or they don't even want to like, you know, leave it open and like see where this goes, and maybe keep in touch, and
Mhm. Yeah, definitely something I'm still figuring out. But yeah,
yeah.
broad question and loaded question again. But like overall, what do you think all of these like experiences in terms of travel romance, like what do you think they've taught you, like in general and also like about yourself?
I guess the same thing that any other romance has taught me in my life, which is that I'm never someone that would say no to an experience just because I think it'll end in hurt. Like I'd always rather experience anything I can rather than like limit myself just because I'm like afraid of the consequences. And that's definitely been like reaffirmed over and over again. And every romantic experience I've had, it's been like, and it's led me to really amazing places, and I've had like really amazing experiences because of that mentality and because I know that I'm like strong enough to handle it, and whatever happens, like I just keep going and I keep amassing more and more of these experiences, and I'm like better for it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like whenever I think about like what my experience have taught me, I always think like, oh, it's brought out like the most unhealed part of myself. Like I've got so much work to do. Whereas like I feel like you've reflected on it in like, oh no, I actually do this like really nice thing, and it's quite like a positive because like that's such a good like thing to hold with you and have. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and within that, I think is the unhealed parts of myself and all of that. That like maybe it is the unhealed part of me that wants to keep throwing myself into those situations. Because, like I said before, then at the end, I'm like mad at myself. Like, why did I put myself in this position again? Like, here I am again, and I knew this would happen, and blah blah blah. And it's like I can experience that in that moment, but I'm still overall grateful
Mm.
for the experience I had that led up to that. And yeah, I don't know. It's like a confusing line between like when are you like repeating, when is something a pattern that you're repeating because of something that you haven't healed, or is it just like necessary for you to keep repeating that pattern until something else is revealed to you,
Mm.
or like, yeah, I don't know.
Mm. I think it's just like even this conversation is just teaching me, yeah, like you're always well, me personally, like, I'm always focused on, like, I've gotta do so much more work, I've gotta do so much more work, but it's like, no, like, sometimes, like, yeah, the unhealed parts of yourself can actually be, like, really nice qualities as well. It's not just something you have
Yeah.
to do all the time, but
And I
yeah.
think it's like not I think definitely there's a good amount of like self-improvement work that is your own responsibility, but I think a lot
Mhm,
of it is also like through having like positive healthy relationships with other people, like that can help heal you. And like I think there's a lot of there's like that debate where it's like do you need to fully like heal yourself before you can be in a healthy relationship, or can being in a healthy relationship kind of like help you. I think there's this negative like connotation associated with letting someone help you, or with like being or relying on someone, or having any kind of like dependency in a
mm,
relationship. And it's not that it should be a dependency, but
mm,
I do think that like I don't think you have to be a fully healed person to experience like real love and like healthy love, because no one's fully healed, you know.
mm. Yeah.
And even if you like, of course you have to be willing to take accountability for things, you have to be self-aware to a certain extent, but like you can also lean on someone that like loves you and wants you to do better, and like
Mhm.
they can lift you up in that way. So
Yeah.
it's not all
Yeah.
on us.
Yeah. I hope. I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, like, every time I've got into one of these connections or where I feel connected to someone, it's been so much more intense than, like, what I've experienced at home. And I feel like it would be the same for you watching the stories, but, like, how have you, like, coped with obviously that switch between, so you've come home in between, so you've experienced these, like, dreamy romances and then yeah.
It's hard. It's hard, like especially coming back home after the summer. Like I've been living in the city in New York, at my dad's apartment for the last month, and I'll be here for another month before I move into my own place with my friends. But it's been, especially before I got a job, when I was just kind of like here doing nothing, like letting the past 3 months wash over me and just being like, what the fuck just happened? Like it was a radical shift. Like I went from literally being in like a fairy tale for 3 months in the most beautiful places in the world, like
Mhm.
the most amazing experiences, to just like in a room, like looking at the walls, like what is
It's
my
very
life?
different, yeah.
And yeah, no, it's like really, really hard. Yeah, I got a job, and so I'm busy now, and I'm
Mhm,
moving in with a friend soon, and things are looking up. But like, it's a really difficult shift to deal with. And but in terms of like the intensity of like relationships abroad versus at home, I
mhm,
kind of just I have always had just like intense. Like I don't think I've had a relationship with anyone, romantic or not, that hasn't been
mhm,
intense.
mhm,
So yeah, I definitely gravitate towards that. But there's a different kind of intensity, you know, because there's like an expiration date stamped on it. It can be hard to know whether or not the connection that you're feeling is like real, or if it would be this strong if you guys weren't in the situation.
yeah.
Or like I've had, you know, situations where I'm basically like playing house, like living with someone for like a short period of time, and I'm like, oh, we could just keep doing this every day. Cut
I
that
feel
out.
I feel that one. I love it. Carry on. I will.
um, but well, maybe you don't have to cut that. We'll talk about it. But yeah, but there's definitely, you know, you can get into like a groove of things, and it feels like we could just keep doing this, and like
Mhm.
it's hard to know if that's true. Like if you guys would enjoy keep like doing that forever.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, you are definitely in that, like, honeymoon phase when you're like
yeah, it's such a bubble.
mhm.
This concludes the first part of Making Connections in Europe. I hope you enjoyed. In part 2, me and Ruby discuss red flags and warning signs to watch out for when travelling, in others but also within ourselves, because it's sometimes hard to stay grounded when you're alone in another country, and this makes you way more vulnerable to situations you wouldn't usually find yourself in. So yeah, make sure to give that a listen. It's also a good little reminder to hold yourself accountable when travelling. Make sure to follow Ruby's personal and band's Instagram. I'll make sure to link them in the description, and also the CalmnConnected Insta to stay up to date with the latest updates and info. Sending you love wherever you are in the world. Have a nice day.
Thank you. I love you. I've enjoyed the catch up.
Thank you.